this story of the disciples, heading away from Jerusalem after Jesus' passion, going to Emmaus, we can see how this heaviness interiorly, this desolation that they were going through, was threatening to lead them away from Jesus, right? And that's what happens to us too, is that desolation can threaten to lead us away from him. But Jesus reaches out in the midst of that, and it's through his consolations instead that he strengthens them in order to continue the path in following the Lord. It literally turns them back around in this case, right? Back to go to Jerusalem. And so that leads us to being able to contemplate the further rules of discernment of spirits. The very first two rules of discernment of spirits that Ignatius gives to us is about a path. Which path are we on, right? Just like these disciples, they started on the path away from God with this desolation, but then were turned around with God's help onto the right path. So, same way for us in our spiritual life, there are two paths that we can be on. I don't have all this written out for you, but on your spiritual battle tactics sheet, I've got the numbers for each of the rules, and the numbers for the rules are up here as well. So in the corner, I've got 1, 2. These are the first two rules, and so you'll see when we go to the number up there, it corresponds to where it is on the sheet there. So the first two rules is about the path. We can either be on a path away from God, or we can be on the path toward God. And Ignatius describes that when we're moving away from God, these are persons going from mortal sin to mortal sin, right? So we're on a path going from sin to sin, away from God. If we're going toward God, we're on the path where persons are going intensely purifying their sins and rising from good to better in the service of God, right? So we could be on one path or the other, and there really is there's no center option. It's not possible for us to just simply not just stay in one spot. Because if we're just trying to stay in one spot, we're probably slipping away from the Lord. So Ignatius, in his first two rules, is going to explain that it's important for us to know which path that we're on, because the good spirit and the bad spirit act in different ways depending upon which path we're on, right? And you'll notice that for the disciples there, it was really difficult to understand what's going on and all of the interior thoughts going through. So these are going to help us to begin to sort through it for ourselves as well. So these first two paths, and I would say, since you are here, the course of your life is on the path striving to follow God. Doesn't mean you're perfect. Notice that it says that we're trying to purify our sins. We're trying to grow better, right? Doesn't mean we're perfect already, but we're trying to follow the Lord. So you're here, we're on the path following the Lord. But there can be parts of our life, choices that we make, that lead us on the path away from the Lord. So the very first rule of the discernment of spirits, St. Ignatius, he ponders, what does it look like when we're on the path away from God? So if we're going on a path away from God, which is from sin to sin, then the bad spirit and the good spirit are going to do two different things. They're going to act in different ways. If we're going from sin to sin, the bad spirit, he says, will propose to us apparent pleasures, making us imagine sensual delights in order to hold us more and make us grow in our vices and sins. So he is going to, the enemy, if we think about it, if we're on the path away from God, the enemy wants to keep us on that path away from God, right? And so he's going to try to make us feel as good as we possibly can about that, right? So he's going to make sin look pleasurable and desirable, and he wants us to continue to grow away from the Lord. The term there that Ignatius used, in order to hold them, right? There is this sense of the enemy trying to hold us back, trying to hold us, and so we might experience, especially if we've got sins that are habits in our life, those habits seem to hold us there, and it's difficult to be let go. So that's what the enemy is going to try to do. But what is God going to try to do? If we're on that path away from God, we're going from sin, does God like that? No, he doesn't, right? He wants to get us off of that path. So he is not going to allow us to remain comfortable. Instead, Ignatius says, the good spirit uses the opposite method, pricking them and biting their consciences through the process of reason. All right, so God, the good Spirit, is going to try to get us off that path back to following Him, and so He's going to prick our conscience. He's going the experience of guilt, the experience of shame. Some of that is given to us as good from God to help us turn around, right? To help us notice that something's wrong, something's off. You know, something is, there's just, I'm not at peace by the way that I'm going. And oftentimes it's going to work on our reason. You know, the enemy oftentimes will try to play up our emotions, make us feel good about it, but God is often going to be, applying what we know through our rational mind.